All right, so this is a story that, well, it doesn't really start at the beginning. We're going to jump right in at its darkest, most hidden secret.
So, picture this. We're in the Caribbean Sea, back in 2005. I want you to imagine a place that's just completely cut off from everything. No tourists, no prying eyes, definitely no media cameras.
It's a small, private island. And on the surface, it looks like a postcard, Pure luxury paradise, white sand, crystal clear water. But then you notice something else. These high-security boundaries. This wasn't just about keeping people out. It was about total, absolute control.
Because behind those closed doors, something truly dark was happening. One of the most disturbing crimes of our time. And look, this isn't some made-up movie plot. This is real. It's all detailed in thousands upon thousands of pages of official U.S. investigation records and court documents.
Okay, so this island of secrets, it was the absolute center of the network, the epicenter of a horrific operation built on trafficking and exploiting young girls. This was the hidden hub, the command center, for something that was allowed to fester in secrecy for years and years.
And the operation itself? It's just chilling how organized it all was. These girls were lured in with false promises, jobs, help, a chance at a better life. They arrive at this island with a helipad, guest houses, cameras everywhere, every luxury you can think of. But the one thing missing? Justice. Any sense of law, any concept of consent. At the very center of it all was one man, Jeffrey Epstein.
And this is where we get to the core puzzle, the two faces of Epstein. Publicly, he was this billionaire financier, right? An elite insider, rubbing elbows with the most powerful people in the world. But that image, it wasn't just a cover. It was a weapon. It was a shield. Because behind that public face, the court documents and investigations were painting a completely different picture. A man at the very heart of a criminal network.
So you have to ask, how? How did this go on for so long? I mean, we're talking years before he was finally arrested in 2019. Think about it. When those first complaints started trickling in down in Florida, nobody could have possibly imagined that they were pulling on a tiny thread that would unravel this massive, global scandal involving power, politics, and a total breakdown of the justice system.
So to even begin to understand how all of this was possible, we actually have to go way back to his beginnings, which are, well, surprisingly normal. The real mystery of Jeffrey Epstein started long before he ever set foot on that island.
So who was he? Jeffrey Edward Epstein. Born in Brooklyn, 1953, to a middle-class family. His dad worked for the government, his mom was a school assistant. There's no inherited fortune here, no family business empire, nothing that gave him a special head start. This is the kind of background that usually leads to a regular, quiet life. And that right there, that's the first big piece of this puzzle.
And this timeline of his rise, it's just bizarre. In the early 70s, he drops out of college, no degree. He ends up teaching math and physics at this really prestigious private school, the kind of place where New York's elites send their kids. Then, bam, 1976, he just leaves teaching and lands a job at a top-tier investment bank, with no degree and zero track record. The leap from that classroom to Wall Street is something investigators are still scratching their heads about.
Which brings us to the next massive question mark, the invisible fortune. Where did all the money come from? It's just as big a mystery as his career. You know the old saying, follow the money? Well, with Epstein, that's easier said than done.
Think about it. With most billionaires, you can kind of trace their wealth, right? It's in public companies, stocks, real estate. You can see it. Epstein was totally different. His wealth was opaque, almost impossible to see. He had this convenient excuse that he only worked for super-rich clients who needed total privacy. But that itself was a huge red flag. His whole operation was built on keeping things hidden. His whole model was built on secrecy. He told people he was a specialist in things like tax planning and, structuring wealth in a confidential way. He used this tangled web of private trusts and shell companies, basically a system designed to make it impossible to see where the money was coming from or where it was going. And investigators now believe that very system became the perfect shield for everything else he was doing. Now, a huge piece of this money puzzle comes down to one guy, the billionaire Leslie Wexner. Wexner was a key client, and he gave Epstein this just extraordinary level of access to his finances. He even gave him power of attorney. I mean, that's basically handing someone the legal keys to your entire financial kingdom. This is the moment Epstein's life goes into hyperdrive, mansions, private jets, the works. But here's the thing, even that one incredible connection doesn't explain the whole story.
So, okay,
if he wasn't really a typical Wall Street guy, then what was his business? This is where the story gets even murkier, and it stops being just about money and starts being about power and influence.
The theory that a lot of investigators and journalists have landed on is this. His real business wasn't managing money. It was managing people. He was what you'd call an information broker, a guy whose real currency wasn't dollars, but access, introductions, influence.
So how did he do it? Well, he figured out what powerful people wanted. He'd connect politicians to billionaires, scientists to big money donors. But here's the key. He controlled the space. Meetings didn't happen in boardrooms, they happened in his private homes, on his jets, on his island. By controlling the where, he controlled the who. He made himself the indispensable gatekeeper for these high-level introductions. And that begs the question, right? Was this really about finance, or was he managing something else in the shadows?
And that brings us to today. Because even after his arrest, and then his death in custody, the biggest questions are still just hanging there. His death didn't close the book on this. If anything, it just made the mystery deeper and more complicated.
So we're left with these huge, lingering mysteries. Was this guy really some kind of self-made financial genius? Or was he just a pawn in a game that was way, way bigger than him? Where did the hundreds of millions of dollars actually come from? Was he managing finances, or was he managing secrets? His story is so far from over.
And really, it all boils down to one final massive question. Is this just the story of one incredibly messed up evil man? Or is it a story about a whole system? A system of wealth, power, and influence that didn't just look the other way, but actively protected these secrets for so long. And that's the question we're all still left with.